when some king emperor hurt someone during his shikar, the idea came that some forest areas should be reserved for king emperor's shikar, so that civilians located there, owning that area, owning that forest, do not get accidentally hurt. So first reservation started at that time. But that was very small, and that was not opposed by the masses living in the forests. But when the company, East India, came, they realized that these people have such riches, such timber, teak, sal, and all kinds of varieties, which can be used in shipbuilding, in railroad. Why should it remain with them? Why should they remain the owners of this precious resource? So they started reserving forest for East India Company left and right. And people living there were evicted. That caused the first tribal rebellion as part of First War of Independence, which culminated into 1857. And then Crown had to take over the reins of India. They brought in first forest law in 1860s. This forest law, with some tinkering here and there, is still available as Indian Forest Act of 1927 governing our forests. The provision there was excellent, that whenever British Crown will reserve forests, they will cause a notification to be issued by the deputy commissioner or collector, whatever name you call the district magistrate, that this area is going to be reserved for the government. Anybody having any claim of ownership of any cultivated area or any minor forest produce or any timber or any other community right should represent within 3 months, 90 days. And Deputy Commissioner will hear this claimant, and after sifting through the evidence produced, will decide whether this person's claim is valid. If it is valid, then that area will be excluded from reservation. And if it is found invalid, then that area will be included in reservation, and they will proceed ahead, and notification will be issued to reserve the forest. So nobody present here would think that there was anything unfair in the law. And this is the part of 1927 Act even today. But not a single claim, first of all, came because of different barriers. First, Deputy Commissioner's office is located hundreds of kilometers away from the forest dwellers. Second, Deputy Commissioner's language of notification is English. This tribal living in forest areas of Andhra, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh doesn't even know Telugu, Hindi or Marathi. They speak their own dialect. They're not educated enough. Third, their living conditions are not such that they could preserve documents. Thatched roof, mud houses. Even if they had some document proving that they were cultivating this area since 3 generations or 4 generations, it would be washed away by first rain. No steel almirahs are with them. They cannot deposit these documents anywhere. With these barriers, every time the area was reserved for British Crown, notification was duly issued, order was duly passed that no claim received, 90 days have lapsed, and therefore this whole area is reserved. Then the people will come. When suddenly government machinery moves in, then people will come to know that what fault of us? We have been cultivating this since ages. Why are you removing us? You did not represent when time was there, so now you are thrown out. You are dispossessed. That process continued not only in colonial period, but even in the period after independence. And despite the law governing our forest having this provision, nothing could be done. This was realized by government very late, and then this legislation came in 2006, known as the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006. This is the only legislation in the world where a government confesses that historical injustice was done to our own people during colonial period and even after independence. You will never find such a confession from government in any legislation anywhere in the world. But this legislation has this kind of candid confession that we have been party to injustice being committed to our own people. By not recognizing these barriers and continuing reserving forest and throwing them out of their livelihoods. This act, in its spirit of that confession, kept aside the officialdom from initial process of recognizing claim to overcome all the barriers. No official will be part of the process at the first stage to have this claim process started. So this act said that it will be the Gram Sabha, village assembly, which will issue a notification for inviting claims. Now, Gram Sabha comprises all 18 years and above people living in that village who are voters. That is the membership of the village assembly. So, everyone who speaks the claimant's language, who is living next to the claimant, they are the starting point for a starting claim process. And they were given the authority for first stage verification and adjudication. That obviated the need of commuting long distances to Deputy Commissioner's office or subdivisional office or anywhere. Just go to the next door where the elected village head is living, put your claim there, find the date of the meeting or time of the meeting, go there and explain your claim. And also explain that you don't have any documentary evidence because it was there but it is lost. So since it is the case with every one of them, they will all appreciate it. And then they have been watching you cultivate this land for so many years, they would vouch for it. And that will make the first stage recommendation that yes, this person's claim is valid, right, should be given the title to continue cultivating this forest land for livelihood purposes. With that, the second stage was at a subdivision level and the third stage at the district magistrates level. But there also, the provision is to include 3 representatives, including 1 lady member from the elected panchayat of that level, subdivision level panchayat as well as district level panchayat. At least 1 lady should be there, and one belonging to the scheduled tribe should be there. So with that, they tried to ensure that people's voice was heard even at those higher fora where officials were chairing, officials were involved. Even with these kind of provisions, because at that time I was working in Madhya Pradesh for this department which was implementing this act, I realized that officialdom was prevailing through and through, and historical injustice was being preserved, continued to be perpetrated, and these people were being denied. Why? The first thing of rejection was that you have not attached caste certificate, that you are a tribal. Second thing, I found that you have not attached anything by way of evidence. Because law says this. Law is enacted by parliament, and parliament is over and above all the Gram Sabhas. Now, even if Gram Sabha is saying, but there is no attachment, no evidence, no caste certificate, how can you be given this right? And a large number of claims were being rejected. Since I had taken on board media and civil society organizations by enlightening them about the laws, rules, and telling them that whenever they see anything wrong happening in the field, they should be publishing, they should be making general public known about whatever wrong was happening, and even the administration at the highest level should be communicated. So I got these letters from civil society organizations and others that this is what was happening. Then I had to issue a circular going beyond the law that it will not be the duty of this claimant to attach caste certificate or documentary evidence, but it will be the duty of officialdom. When the claim comes to subdivision level, it will be the duty of subdivisional magistrate to investigate whether this person belongs to the tribe he is claiming or she is claiming. If finds that yes, then should attach a caste certificate. If finds that no, doesn't belong, then should attach a speaking order. That why this person is not a scheduled tribe. Similarly, the forest department should attach documentary evidence claimed by that person that I had this document but I don't have now. Or should go through their records and say that records from such and such year to such and such year have been seen. There is no proof that whatever he is claiming or he has written in the claim or she has written in the claim is there. Only then you can reject this. If a single claim is rejected, only the flimsy ground that this is not attached will not be acceptable. That changed slightly. But even then, when we visited, we found that things were still not in the spirit of the law. Because Gram Sabha meetings were being held just 10 or 15 people. Big wigs of the village attending and deciding the fate of everyone in the village. Whereas the law stipulated that not less than 2/3 of the village assembly should be present. So I found that it was impossible for women to attend those meetings. One, these people were so poor that in the morning, the woman of the house will have to get up, go through her morning chores, cook for the whole day, and then accompany her husband for daily wage labor to earn some income. And when they return, the husband may go here and there, drink or, smoke or gossip, but this woman will have to settle the quarrels of the children, will have to settle the complaints of the in-laws and will have to cook for the evening. And then will have to worry that she has to get up early in the morning tomorrow. How can she afford to go to such a wasteful exercise like Gram Sabha meeting? So their participation was almost nil. Then we realized that unless we do something, the transparency of the whole process cannot be assured, and the historical injustice will continue. So then I approached the Chief Secretary of my state that I want that these Gram Sabha meetings are held only in the evening after 7 when everybody has returned from the daily wage labor. So only the rich and prosperous are not hijacking the Gram Sabha, but all the poor are also attending. Second, I want to invite the whole village for dinner so that this woman is absolved of cooking in the evening. She can come with the children, with the parents-in-law, with everyone, and attend the Gram Sabha meeting to ensure the transparency of the whole process. So it was brushed aside that, what are you talking? Crores of rupees will go down the drain. I argued that whenever we have a meeting where nothing is decided, we have high tea at the state expenses. Here, matters of a state are being decided. Left-wing extremism is a serious problem in these areas, Maharashtra, Andhra, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. And it is because of the perceived injustice by these masses. And you are saying that spending this much money will be waste going down the drain. We should be doing this. He didn't agree. Then I approached the Chief Minister at my own peril. I said, this has been rejected, but I am of a firm belief that this should be done. Unless women participate, transparency of the whole process cannot be ensured, because men folk, they must have suffered at the hands of high and mighty of the village at one point of time or the other. So politically, they would not risk opposing these people in that political process of settling claims. But women, they will. They will ensure that yes, only that person who has been really cultivating there should be given that title, nobody else should be. Chief Minister, being a politician, understood and agreed. Sanctioned 8 crores for this meal. And you will not believe that attendance shot up to 98%, 99% in every Gram Sabha. Because for poor people, meal was an attraction more than anything else. Even if nothing is decided in the Gram Sabha meeting, at least they will have a meal. They will save that much money for the next day. But the process became very transparent. And when Secretary Tribal Affairs, in fact your own secretary from Andhra Pradesh, some 84 batch, I'm forgetting his name, he had come, we saw that in one village assembly meeting, the settling process was on, and one literate tribal was reading names and the claim land.